Surely thought is a process worth exploring, but the ocean in which it resides is one of unmeasurable bounds. Which I think for me, what that ultimately means, or at least what I'm seeking to express, is that I feel that when it comes to time, and just not only time, right, our mind state or inside our internal thought processes, time is measured differently because it's actually quite difficult for you to measure a thought, right? You can look at a clock and try to utilize that as a mechanism to actually measure how quickly or how efficiently a thought occurs, but when you actually understand what it is that you're doing, you're actually just interpreting the clock. You're not actually measuring the process in relation to what's actually occurring within your own particular let's say brain, but I'm not actually talking about the actual matter itself, but more so the etheric substance that composed, or the etheric substance that makes up what it is, what we call a brain, or what we might ultimately term a mind. So it's actually quite very difficult to measure time within the mind of oneself. Now, ultimately, there's always been this thought process around as a human being, you are in fact a person without, well, it sounds crazy though, it's like a person without a head that only manifests itself at the point of analysis, of querying that particular, aspectual thing, and then that's when a head actually comes into formation and into fruition. But that's a thought for another time. But then again, at the same time, what we're trying to bring reference to here is that there's in our mind state, it's ultimately quite different. It's ultimately quite different to understand or to appropriately conceptualize how the effect of time is measured in our internal thoughts. And I think that's probably one of the key fundamental things that would help us to begin to unlock a deeper, it could be measured as the firing of synapses, of how long it takes for a signal to move from one synapse and then be interpreted by another synapse. But for me, I feel that's actually quite a limiting thing. We can't because the synapses don't actually interpret or give an aspect as to the process of thought, right? Whereas thought and also the subconscious within itself is a mechanism that functions to determine or to alternate to the frequency of which we are currently experiencing as the passing of time, right? It's an actual frequency that's oscillating at a specific rate. This rate, I think, ultimately is determined by the way the particles are ultimately in a vibratory state, and also I think that the notion of light plays a big part in that, because obviously it's the light reflecting off the particles that ultimately determines our perception of not only time, but of understanding it as ordered set of events. And I think there's different types of time as well when you conceptualize it, because I think that observed time and experienced time are completely two different things, which is why when we're high, we see and experience things differently. And just the point behind this, I'm just trying to make sense of reality in terms of the way that I see it. And I think that while time itself is not really something that's so magnanimous and so mysterious, but I think it's definitely something that has a relevance and importance to us, because it's the first thing that I think we come to realize in relation to what gives sanity to our being, and what also gives us a sense of safety is being able to understand this notion of time as it is, and as we experience it. As we dip and drift away from that, things become a bit more complex and things become a bit more difficult to maneuver. But I think even from a spiritual sense, it's where we should, as rational, or as what we conceptualize as rational beings in today's age, is probably where we want to begin to bring our thought. And then from then onwards, we can then extend and extrapolate into other realms by also delving into how we may ultimately interpret time within the subconscious mind, or subconscious conscious mind, if that makes any sense to anybody. But yeah, ultimately there's ultimately that. But I think there's definitely a lot of different things that come into play in our interpretation of this and in our understanding. And I think just bringing a concept to that, and also just hoping to bring awareness or shed some light to that thought, in anyone who may need it ahead of time, is vitally important, and that's why I seek to express this in this day, at this period of experience and existence. It's the notion of first understanding and conceptualizing this before we even get into anything more grander, than things such as changes and things such as mechanisms that are utilized to govern the world, not only through time but thought as well, which is ultimately what I intend to delve into over the coming period of time.